Joining us on the program to talk all about spiritual care and values integration at Houston Methodist is Zoë Krizak. Zoe is a longtime supporter and listener of this radio station, KSHJ, and she also has a history as part of the Catholic Chaplain Corps as well. Zoe, thanks so much for coming by here at the radio station. We appreciate it. Also, thanks, by the way, last week you also recorded a testimony for our Share-a-thon. We thank you so much for your support.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So you work for Houston Methodist, and it is in this spiritual care realm, if you will, but you have a relatively new position. What exactly is your title with Houston Methodist System?
It's the program manager of spiritual care volunteer training and education, and it's a product of a funding from Carol Luke, James and Carol Luke family.
And so what's the goal of this new department that's kind of been created?
The goal of the department is to provide spiritual care training and education for spiritual care volunteers across the entire system of Houston Methodist, 8 hospitals, and continuing education, training for new volunteers.
Which is profound because not every hospital system has something like this, where it's a department specifically focused on spiritual care. Usually I would think spiritual care may be integrated with another department or something else, but that's very specific. And were you able to get on board with it right from the start?
Well, I was with the Catholic Chaplain Corps at Houston Methodist downtown in the medical center and worked in the chaplaincy department, the spiritual care department with Houston Methodist. And so I learned that there was an opportunity there to do what I was doing for the Catholic Chaplain Corps, but at a larger scope across the entire system of Houston Methodist. And I've had a long relationship with Houston Methodist, was born in a Houston Methodist hospital, went back as a junior volunteer for Houston Methodist Hospital when I was 12 years old, and then was a spiritual care volunteer in my adult life.
So let's unpack that for a second, Zoe, and talk about being a spiritual care volunteer, because that's what you head up, is the training and education in that. For people who don't know about the spiritual care side of a patient, somebody who's getting treatment at a Houston Methodist hospital, for example, tell me about that. What does a spiritual care volunteer do?
Well, spiritual care volunteers, they'll come in for the day and they'll receive a list of patients that are in the hospital, and it'll have their name and possibly their religion and maybe a few details, how long they've been there. And our spiritual care volunteers go down that list, visiting with those patients to offer spiritual, emotional, and prayer support. And so they'll knock on the door, introduce themselves, and explain what it is they'd like to do and share how long they plan to be there, always thanking them and always letting the patient know that spiritual care is always available whenever they need it, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And so that could be anything from prayer to just a meditation session, I guess?
It could, but actually when our volunteers and chaplains enter the room, we let the patient lead us in the conversation so that we know what it is they need. We don't always go in for a prayer. We may never pray with that patient. Okay. It's whatever they want, spiritual-wise. If they need a sacrament, we can help get that taken care of. Bring in their pastor, or bring in a priest, or if they're, depending upon what religion they are, what faith tradition, whatever resource they need. But it's more of assessing the needs of the patient. It could be, it always entails listening. So we listen, we look at the room to see, are there signs of visitors in that room? Are the lights on, windows open? What's the mood? What do you think the patient is feeling? And then we really zero in on what is their greatest need? What is the greatest need for that patient?
Yeah, it's so I can imagine it's very rewarding in that sense too, being able to help that individual person, listen to that individual person, be able to kind of join with them in a sense spiritually, be able to figure out where they're coming from.
It is. It's very. It's really it's really an honor to be in that room with them. For them to share their story. They share very personal stories, and for them to entrust us to their stories so that we can, we listen and possibly, we walk with them. We don't fix anything, but we listen to them. We sit with them in their sorrow or joy,
Mhm.
you know. hmm
And so these volunteers, spiritual care volunteers, are they matched up based on religion? So if you have somebody who's Catholic, will they go in and see somebody who's Catholic? Or if they're Protestant, will they go in to see somebody who's Protestant?
Not necessarily. At
Okay.
the in the medical center, we do have it. We do have it that set up that way, where the Catholic Chaplain Corps does have a an employed lay chaplain
Mhm.
and also priest, Father Desi. And the census that they run, the list of patients that they give to their volunteers who are all Catholic, these are all Catholic patients that they see.
Mhm.
And then, but at the community hospitals, it's not so. It's a combination. You get to see everyone, you
Okay.
know. And I know through the Catholic Chaplain Corps, as we do through Houston Methodist training, volunteers are trained to assist all faith traditions and no faith traditions. So they're capable of offering spiritual care, emotional support, prayer support to all faiths and no faiths. So.
So how many volunteers currently do you have that are doing this kind of thing within the system?
We have about 235 right now, a large group of volunteers across the system, and we're growing.
I was going to say there's a lot of patients, a lot of hospitals within the system, Houston Methodist system. So I'm guessing there's a need for more.
There's a great need for more, and I'm so glad you said that because we have training coming up in February. It's our spring 2025 training, and we do need more spiritual care volunteers. We have a new hospital in Cyprus, but we also need spiritual cares all over the system. So.
Well, I want to rest assure people who might be listening who might want to volunteer in some capacity with Houston Methodist that they can do so, even though they might not have a background as a chaplain or anything like that. You guys aim to really meet people, even if they don't have a theology degree or anything
Right.
like that.
That's right. You do not have to have a theology degree. What we do want you to be is grounded in your faith. Come grounded in your faith, and we will show you how to have a spiritual care conversation, how to listen, active, empathic listening. We'll share with you how to minister to patients of all different faith traditions, and really, it's about cultural humility. We can't know everything when we go into that room. I mean, we will never know everything.
Mhm.
But if we're humble and we are curious, respectfully curious about the other, then that's what we need. hmm
So you'd mentioned that all that's coming up. What month, what dates are we talking about here?
February is our training. So we'll have, it's a hybrid model. So we have 2 classes in person. They're bookended on Saturdays. That's February 1st and February 22nd. We'll give you a little breakfast at one, and we'll give you breakfast and lunch at the last one. And then in the middle, they're Thursday nights Zoom from 6 p.m. to 8:30 Zoom.
Very
Virtual.
good. And luckily, I imagine you guys are also flexible depending upon the individual schedule. If they reach out to you guys and say, hey, I can come to this, or I'm located here, you guys are willing to talk with them and figure out, okay, how can we get them the training that they want?
I do. If there's if they need a makeup session, I'll go to wherever they are to provide that, or Zoom. We'll make sure they get what it is they need so that they can volunteer with us. hmm
How do you begin to make an assessment of how many volunteers you need when you think about all those patients across the Houston Methodist system? Because it seems to me, Zoe, at first, for people who are unfamiliar, Houston's so big, it just can seem overwhelming at first.
It's huge. I like to look at the model that we used at HMH with the Catholic Chaplain Corps. I just created this huge master sheet. I wish I would have brought it, but huge master sheet of all the units in the hospital, and then who's the lead chaplain of that unit, how many beds are in that unit, then Sunday through Saturday have the slot, and I would just fill them with the volunteers. So you could have an instant look at where are opportunities to place spiritual care volunteers. It's a lot like air traffic control. It really is. So, and when you have consults that come in, you move people around to make sure that those needs are met.
What is the benefit for the individual patient who receives spiritual care in whatever form that might take?
I think the benefit is that they feel, well, first they have control. They can say, yes, you could come in, or no, you cannot. And we want them to have some feel of control, because in a hospital, people are coming in and out who you have to allow the care team to come and take care of you. But I think the benefit is really, it helps patients feel a sense of calmness. It helps them express what it is on their heart, and they can sit with what it is. They can hear themselves say it. I think sometimes when we hear ourselves say what we're thinking, then we can really assess what it is, what is really our hope, and it's a person feeling like they've been heard because they are heard. We take time to sit down and listen, and we can, if they need a consult with social workers, we can help make connections. If they need those sacraments, we can help them get the sacraments. So many people have, we find that they have been away from church. Maybe they're shut-ins and they're at the hospital and they've been away from church. Often with Catholic patients, they would like the sacrament of Holy Communion, or confession. They would like anointing, and so every chaplain is able to, make those referrals to the correct, to the priest or to the extraordinary minister of Holy Communion. So Houston Methodist is very well aware of the needs of its Catholic patients. We have tabernacles in all of our chapels
Really?
that hold the Eucharist, that hold the Blessed Sacrament.
Wow.
So
That's incredible.
it is
that it's there.
incredible. It's a great place to be.
Sure.
Hmm.
I can imagine that when you're volunteering, talking to an individual patient, it also has the benefit for those family members who are also sitting there in the room. Maybe if they're Catholic too, there's an opportunity for them to receive some kind of spiritual care, even though that may not have been your intention. Going in there and praying with a patient, they might get something out of that too, and could even bring families together.
It does. It does bring families together. And spiritual care volunteers and chaplains, we are to minister to patients, families, and staff.
Okay.
So everyone we pass in the hallway is an opportunity. You know, if you're on an elevator with someone and they look at your badge and it says spiritual care, you know, those are moments too that often you offer care in an elevator wherever you are. You know, when you can see there's a need.
I wanted to ask you, Zoe, if you have any special stories that you might be able to tell us about, either your time at this current job, but maybe your past job with the Catholic Chaplain Corps, about maybe a time you had a good experience with a patient who maybe was Catholic, maybe really appreciated your coming there just to talk with them, maybe even just to pray with them.
Yes, that's an everyday occurrence. You know,
Okay.
working
Yeah.
in that position or in this position too. Um, there are so many miracles that just God seems to be orchestrating that you get to see. I can't tell you the number of times when, or this one time, I was bringing the Eucharist to a patient and I was delayed. I was delayed by something else. And so when I went to see her, it was in the afternoon and I was apologetic about not being able to get there in the morning. And she says, "No, actually, this is my holy hour. I'm not able to get to my holy hour, but you came." So it's just,
It's almost like it was on God's timing.
he
You were delayed, but you showed up during her holy hour, bringing her the Blessed Sacrament.
He orchestrates it. If we take the time to reflect on the activities of the day, really journal your activities of the day, you'll see him all over your day. And coincidences, walking into a patient's room, you've been called to bring Holy Communion, and you hear bells ringing in the room. Well, the patient is watching the Mass on the iPad, and it's Eucharistic prayer.
Wow,
So
that's pretty amazing how,
it's-
how that timing can happen. Like I said, you don't even necessarily plan it.
No, but it is heavenly when you get to listen to the spiritual care volunteers come and talk about what they've experienced during the day. You really get to see God working through them. It's heavenly. It's heavenly.
Yeah, and I imagine that's also rewarding for you, trying to help organize, and they come back and they bring you stories.
Yes.
And it's a reminder of God's presence in all of our lives and everyone like that. How long have you been in this field of spiritual care chaplaincy?
In chaplaincy since 2019.
Okay.
In spiritual care volunteer through Houston Methodist since 2017, 17 to 19. But I have always been bringing the sacraments to those in homebound, assisted living. I followed my mom. That's what she did, and I would go along with her and assist with her through the Legion of Mary. She was in the Legion of Mary.
Okay.
So that's how I really got the start, bringing communion to patients and those who were in need.
And did you end up getting a Zoe specific degree to be able to do that kind of thing?
I did. So I already had a master's in pastoral studies from the
Okay.
University of St. Thomas, St. Mary's. When my sons went to St. Thomas High School, as I dropped them off, I just drove down the street to get that degree. I was just really
Hmm.
wanted to know more about our faith. And so when I became a volunteer in 2017, I saw the joy that was of the chaplains, how they loved what they were doing, and I love what I was doing. And I thought, well, I could do this. I have the degree. So I sat down with some of the chaplains in Houston Methodist Baytown, and then I sat down with the director of the Catholic Chaplain Corps, and I ended up going into CPE, an internship with a hospital in the Texas Medical Center, and then a residency with Houston Methodist. So I have 5 units of CPE and board certified. That was quite a fun process, so, but it's done.
A little bit of sarcasm there in terms of fun process, right?
There was a lot of sarcasm. Yeah.
But I imagine that all of that background really helps to be able to give people good information if they're a volunteer and they don't know how to do something that they're asking Zoe, I need to trying to do this. How do you do it? I imagine that your experience really can help them out if they're willing to ask questions. So I imagine that's the big challenge for volunteers, just getting them ask questions, come in, figure out how we do it. And that way you can kind of participate and use whatever their talents and abilities that God gave them to be able to help out within the system.
Right.
I'm guessing.
And a lot of our volunteers already come with experience in ministry, so they have a lot of, and the volunteers have quite an interesting backgrounds, and so and the exciting part of the training is really the reflection portion. We teach, but when we talk about it and reflect on it together as a group, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. You had made reference before to Father Desmond Daniels, who heads up the Catholic Chaplain Corps.
Yes.
And I want to ask you about working with him for a little while and your capacity with that. How much of a joy was it to work with Father Desi? He's been here to the station, recorded some spots for Catholic Chaplain Corps here as well. So
it was a lot of fun, and I still get the pleasure of seeing him and working with him. He is full of joy. Works so hard, incredibly hard, the hours that he puts in all over, not just at Houston Methodist, but he gets called out to other hospitals too. He's on call all the time, and people just love him. He's a personality at the hospital. People love him, and when they come back for treatment, every quarter or so, they find Father Desi.
yeah.
And he is able to offer his Mass through closed circuit TV. So people who are not able to make it to Mass can watch him on closed circuit TV. And
I love that. I can imagine that people being able to watch the Mass or pray via YouTube or in Father Desi's case, closed circuit TV is almost changing the game a little bit since the pandemic, that more and more people can easily kind of feel like they're connected or join in even when they're not able to be there physically.
that's right. And they can use the technology that we have. We also have iPads that we've added the spiritual care section on the iPads where they can click to different faith traditions and they can receive a prayer through that or more resources for that religion. And we also have scripture that is on that iPad. So if you're downtown, and I believe most of our hospitals, you'll have access to an iPad in your room, and you can log on and enjoy the resources like you would at home.
That's interesting. Sometimes it's also just getting the word out if you're ever a patient in the hospital, for example, just to ask for that spiritual care. It sounds like it's really a wonder if you're at a Houston Methodist hospital, what can open up for you if you just ask. If you say, hey, I wanted to watch a Mass or I wanted to pray a certain prayer, it seems as though people will be quite responsive very quickly.
Right. We're really patient-oriented, patient-centered. We want to help the patient. If they want to connect with their Mass or a Shabbat service, we want to connect them. And as you were saying that, I thought of something. But we want to help them make that connection. And in order to receive spiritual care, if someone is a patient or a family member, if they want spiritual care, all they have to do is tell anyone on their care team that they would like to visit with a chaplain or a volunteer. So
I want to reiterate the fact that there is, of course, the need for volunteers, the spiritual care volunteers. That's also open to any faith tradition, for example. So if our Protestant brothers and sisters are listening to this and they also want to be a spiritual care volunteer,
Right.
they can sign up again through you. And you're going to give us the website and all the information here in a moment. But it's for Catholics, Protestants, any other religious denomination. There's also need for volunteers in general at the Houston Methodist system, right? Just in general for people who want to maybe just be a greeter at the door.
Absolutely. And if you're, may I give that website
Sure,
now?
absolutely. No, please.
If you're interested in becoming a traditional volunteer, you can Google Houston Methodist volunteer, and there is a great website that will show you how to make that connection, what hospital to be a traditional volunteer. And if you would like to come and join us as a spiritual care volunteer, you can Google Houston Methodist Spiritual Care Volunteer, and it will take you to our website. And I believe you are also going to post those on your Facebook page.
Yeah, we'll be happy to post that as well,
Okay.
and let people know about this upcoming training, in
Yes.
particular in February. And again,
Yes.
I just want to reiterate the fact that while you guys do have an in-person session and a Zoom session, you, Zoe, are trying to be as flexible with people as possible, depending upon where in the Houston area they are.
That's right.
And what their busy schedule is like. So I just want to reiterate that. Again, tell
Thank
me,
you.
when people want to find it, they Google, what is it again, one more time?
Houston Methodist Spiritual Care Volunteer.
Very good. Okay. And they can find out all about the training. And yes, we'll post it on our Facebook page. Again, we have a Facebook group. It's called GRN Houston. Again, it's GRN : Houston. But we do have that as well. We post a lot of that stuff. So we're happy to be able to do that as well and get the word out about the spiritual care volunteer with Houston Methodist. So it's such a joy to have you back here, Zoe. I can imagine that being a part of this and being plugged into the church as you and your family are is a joy, especially during this time as we're getting ready for Christmas. Remind me where you and your family go to church nowadays.
St. Joseph's in Baytown.
Very good. Excellent. Well, we appreciate, by the way, you making the trip to be here. I know you travel around a lot in your capacity going to the different hospital systems, and you have a very busy schedule. So thank you so much, Zoë Krizak, making the time to be here and continuing to support our ministry as well. Again, spiritual care and values integration with Houston Methodist. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.